is my first international vacation, and I'm going to the Philippines.
If you wanted to visit someone living in the Philippine Islands, you would probably go first to Manila.
My solo vacation to the Philippines started November 29th. The minute I landed in San Francisco and had to figure out how to find the international airport gates, I knew this was going to be an adventure, especially since I've never traveled internationally before. I have an MBA specializing in information systems with about 20 years of accounting experience. My opinion, accounting, financial history, which may be boring to others, is interesting because it can tell a very telling story. I love history and I love to be a truth seeker. That's why I try to use resources that seem most reputable with their information. I'm finding that some information on this subject costs money, so Wikipedia it is. Also, forgive me if I don't pronounce a name correctly. According to Chinatownology.com, Chinese trade in the Philippines was happening well before the Spanish arrived. Interesting enough, Manila, Chinatown, Binondo was created with influence of the Spanish colonial policy. Now on to the day I arrived in Manila. On December 9th, I flew to Manila from Boracay. I told my travel agent, Ben, that I wanted the last stop to be the capital of the Philippines, which is Manila. Ben chose Binondo as a place to stay. Who knew how much I would appreciate that decision? Manila, Binondo, is the world's oldest Chinatown and is also the old financial district that influenced the country to what it is today, according to Philippines Daily Inquirer, dated January 28, 2017. Binondo was established in 1594 by a Spanish soldier and governor of the Philippines, Luis Perez das Marinas, per Chinatownology.com and Wikipedia. Binondo is over 400 years old, and Governor Luis Perez das Marinas' father was killed by Chinese rowers while on a secret expedition to capture the fort at Terranate in the Moluccas, but created Binondo as a permanent settlement for Chinese immigrants. The Spanish called these immigrants Sanglis, who converted to Catholicism. The Chinese immigrants and the Filipino women integrated and had families. This Chinese community is the Mestizos community, and one of the languages spoken is Hokkien. This may be the reason my mom thinks we have some Chinese DNA. There's over 400 years of history to back up this idea. Before World War II, Binondo was the center of the banking and financial district with insurance companies, commercial banks, and other financial institutions. When I was driven from the airport to the hotel, I was amazed by the architecture and large Chinese-themed street arches known as the Chinese Goodwill Arch. As soon as one enters Binondo, they would see that the streets are lined with dragon-shaped street lamps, tons of traffic, and people. Like in Boracay, when my driver pulled up to the hotel, I was expecting a standalone large building like you would find in the U.S., but that wasn't the case. I didn't know it was a hotel until I walked into the lobby, and again, like Boracay, the lobby is this beautiful experience with very welcoming Filipino staff. Help was never far away. My hotel was on Ongpin Street and conveniently within walking distance of Watson's Pharmacy, Chunky Chinese fast food restaurant, a boba tea cafe, and many other stores and street vendors. If I wanted to exchange money, a hotel employee would guide me through the bustling streets, past the broom vendor, and over the bridge. The hotel I stayed at was the Ramada by Wyndham Manila Central. My stay included breakfast. Breakfast was at the top floor restaurant with a bar. Waffles are made on the patio that overlooks the Binondo area. The staff there were extremely kind and helpful. At the time, Russian vessels were ported in the Manila Bay. China is the Philippines' largest trading partner. Export destination and source of imports demonstrate the two countries' flourishing bilateral trade relations. In 2019, bilateral trade between the Philippines and China reached nearly $50 billion. Under China's president, he has spent billions of dollars marketing Chinese culture and the way of life to possibly gain diplomatic and economic advantages, according to Diplomat.com, article dated February 26, 2021. The article said that Beijing wanted to also, quote, bolster its soft power through the entertainment industry, end quote. However, while I was on vacation, Chinese vessels were shooting water cannons at Philippines vessels in the South China Sea, per BBC.com. Beijing claims the Philippines vessels were intruding in their waters. It could possibly be that, quote, friction between the two countries over competing sovereignty claims has increased since Ferdinand Marcos Jr. became Philippine president last year. An international tribunal invalidated China's claim to 90% of the China Sea in 2016, but Beijing does not recognize the ruling and has been building islands in the disputed waters in the recent years. The contested waters have also become a naval flashpoint for China-U.S. relations, and in October, U.S. President Joe Biden warned that the U.S. will defend the Philippines in case of any attack. President Biden's comments were made days after collisions between Filipino and Chinese vessels in the waters. Taiwan, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Brunei also claim parts of the sea, end quote, BBC.com, dated December 10th. Across the street from my hotel was the Santa Cruz Church that was built in 1608 and the Binondo Church built in 1596. I noticed a fire truck parked near these churches, and it seemed to help in caring for the exterior by watering the plants that surrounded these historic buildings. The Spanish mission with the Catholic religion was to influence Manila, Chinatown. One article I found that talked about the politics with the Chinese and the Philippines, called Beneath the Surface, China's Subtle Tightening Grip on Filipino Affairs, published May 25, 2023 by Lieutenant Colonel William D. Yoakley of the United States Air Force. He wrote, the Indo-Pacific region is a hotly contested arena where China and the United States vie for influence. Nowhere is this struggle more evident than in China's backyard, the South China Sea. Like picnic goers tiptoeing past a bee-infested trash can, many smaller and developing countries of the Indo-Pacific region work very deliberately to maintain a semblance of autonomy and sovereignty in a way that does not disturb China. The Philippines is no different. Like many in the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, neighborhood, China is slowly incorporating the Philippines into its beehive in a subtle but systematic way. From real estate to telecommunications, infrastructure projects to mineral extraction, China invests time, money, and resources into the Philippines and builds inseparable associations with critical services. China's growing presence and investment in the Philippines, particularly in the realms of the telecommunications and power transmission, has given the Chinese tremendous influence that can pose a significant risk to Filipino security and U.S. interest in the region. The current Philippines president seems to be balancing the United States and China to keep political differences calm. Lieutenant Colonel William D. Yoakley's article had fascinating references, one of which was a CNN article from November 26, 2019, titled, China can shut off the Philippines power grid at any time, the leaked report warns. When a person looks at the timeline when the article was published in 2019, President Xi was making about $50 billion in bilateral trade with the Philippines. Why would the Chinese at that time, or any time, turn off the Philippines power grid that would also include military facilities, when the Chinese seem to be doing so well financially? I thought it was intriguing that when my cousin and I would try to get a ride back to the hotel from our outings, most of the drivers gave the impression that they weren't familiar with Binondo, or perhaps we weren't pronouncing it right. Let me know. I was also encouraged by a taxi driver to stay more in downtown Manila, but I enjoyed where we stayed. Maybe I'll consider it when we do another trip. We'll see. My cousin Frida and her grandson Alden were my tour guides for most of my vacation except Boracay, only because Alden had to go to school. Alden was 7 at the time when I was in the Philippines, but has since had a birthday. He speaks and writes in English. He learns English at school and also learns English from a lot of YouTube videos. He was also my translator. Frida and Alden speak Tagalog, which is not completely the same as Filipino. My cousin Frida is 77 and has a back injury. She lives in Quezon City and, despite her back injury, still made the long journey to Angeles City and Manila, Binondo, Chinatown to stay with me. We visited the church across the street from the hotel and lit candles. We ate at Chunky Chinese food restaurant. The restaurant was very busy and popular based on the long line. We chose carryout. That helped avoid a long wait. The service was great, and so was the food. We took a tuk-tuk to Rizal Park, also known as Lunita Park, according to LonelyPlanet.com. Says, at this park, Jose Rizal was executed on December 30th, 1896. Who is Jose Rizal? According to Britannica.com, Jose Rizal was born June 19, 1861 in Calamba and died December 30th, 1896 in Manila. He was a patriot, physician, and a man of letters who was an inspiration to the Philippine nationalist movement. Rizal returned to the Philippines in 1892. He founded a nonviolent reform society, the Liga Filipina in Manila, and was deported to Dapitan in northwest Mindanao. He remained in exile for the next 4 years. In 1896, the Katipunan, a Filipino national secret society, revolted against Spain. Although he had no connections with that organization and he had no part in the insurrection, Rizal was arrested and tried for the sedition by the military, found guilty, and he was publicly executed by a firing squad in Manila. After we visited Rizal Park or Lunita Park, we took a jeepney, which I'd never done that before, and that was quite interesting. I'd seen another travel video, and I wish I could remember the couple's name that had posted that video, but they had posted about the honor system as it comes into change when you pass your money up to the driver, and then everybody passes your money, your change back to you to where you are sitting in the jeepney. And it was a nice experience. It's a rough ride, but it was cheap. And I can see why a lot of the locals choose to use them. It's just a cheap, fast way to get around. And although she's 77, she still walked with me, and she was tired. I tried not to want to do, a whole lot, but it was her idea to go to the park. So I was like, okay, if you want to go that far. So we did, and we had a really good time. And then she had to return home again because Alden had to go to school. I didn't wander out too much by myself, just kind of stayed in that area, wandering around, looking around. But that was my experience in Binondo, and I'm hoping I'm pronounced Binondo correctly through this whole thing. I heard my cousin, that's the way she pronounced it, so I was like, okay, I'll just go with that. So it was interesting. I highly suggest staying there. It's got a lot of history, and it tells a lot about Manila. And so that was the end of my vacation. And so I headed back to when I was leaving, suggested by a taxi driver to visit more areas of Manila, but I highly suggest that area. But going to the airport, can we talk about Manila's traffic? Oh my goodness. Wow, that's all I can say. My plane ride or my ride back to the airport was in the morning. And it was a Sunday or something. It wasn't a busy day. So able to get to the airport, and as soon as I get in the airport, wow, busy, but it's organized chaos. You just ask anybody, literally, where do I go? The staff, meaning anybody. And they just led me to this huge line, but again, it's organized chaos. The line went very quickly, went through inspections, and it headed down to my gate. Then off to Taipei. I don't know if I should do a separate video for Taipei. The airport in Taipei is, I think, interesting because it has themed gates. One gate is a Hello Kitty. Another one, it's like a woodland area. I thought that was really cute. It makes for waiting for your flight, I guess, less painful. And then and just boarded the plane, and off I went and was headed home. There were no events on the plane home, and got into LA and took my flight home, and that was it. And I was already missing the Philippines. I really liked it. Highly suggest going there. I don't know for anybody else. I mean, I have, lots of family there, so that's reasons why I went. Mostly is to see family, but the whole experience in itself was worth it. So hope you enjoyed the videos and the photos and the information I had to share. And as Mike would say, like, subscribe, check out my other interests, the sweetchildarizona.com, Mike's Weather Channel, the Phoenix, Arizona weather discussion. And if you're really interested in what we're doing, you can see everything that we have going on, and we'll do more. I don't know from here. I inspired by quite a few travel YouTube videos. I like, if you're into Asian culture or want to know more about it or more about languages or where to go, I really liked, I watched a lot of the Oriental Pearl, her videos. They really are encouraging. If you're interested in languages and other cultures, particularly Chinese or Japanese or Korean even, that was really interesting on her channel. So, that was what's inspired me to do this and to break it up into parts for everybody. So, if you want to see more, let me know. There's lots to see in Arizona. Arizona's beautiful, and we're thinking about going to other places, and maybe we'll post, more kind of like travel videos. I don't know. We'll see. All right. Hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.